think we can start. Excellencies, ministers, head of international organizations, our distinguished honor, Ms. Barco, who is the Nansen Regional Award winner for the Americas, distinguished speakers and panelists, specially invited guests, we want to warmly welcome you to this event. The event is about secure housing, land, and property rights. How can we ensure secure housing, land, and property from emergency response to durable solutions? That's the reason for which we are here today. Because, first of all, it is the right thing to do. And number two, because it is absolutely essential if we want to help our brothers and sisters who are refugees, returnees, stateless persons to live more dignified lives. So that's why we are here today at the margins of the Second Global Refugee Forum. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll be highlighting with our distinguished panelists the depth, breadth, drivers, and consequences of insecure tenure of refugee and returnee populations and their host communities. And we will also highlight how various actors, whether working for government, leading governments, working for UN agencies, leading cities, leading areas, how we are all going to look at these various challenges and highlight good practices that I am sure once we go back home after the Global Refugee Forum will help us into the betterment of the conditions of refugees, returnees, and other displaced persons. This panel is absolutely rich. I want to start by saying that we have Mr. Martin Niteretse, Honorable Minister from the Government of Burundi, on my left. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Minister. We have Ms. Natalie Rock, Secretary of State in the Ministry of Human Rights within the government of the Republic of Honduras, on my right. We have Mr. Jakub Mazur, who is the Deputy Mayor of the city of Wrocław in Poland. Thank you for joining us. And then, as you all know, we have our star in the room, Ms. Barco, who is not only a human rights activist, but she's also our 2023 Nansen Regional Award winner for the Americas. And we have Dr. John Kagwanja, on my far left. Ms. Kagwanja, warm welcome. She is the Chief of the Agriculture and Business Enabling Environment at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and coordinator of the African Land Policy Center. And last but not least, we have the pleasure of also having Mr. Chris Lukien, who is the Chief Executive Officer of ZOA International, also on my left hand. Join me, please, colleagues, into warmly welcoming our distinguished panel. Thank you very much. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Under-Secretary General Haoliang Shu. Mr. Shu was appointed UN Under-Secretary General and UNDP Associate Administrator by the Secretary General in June 2023. USG Shu has served not only as a Director of the Bureau for Policy and Program Support at the United Nations Development Program, but he has also had very, very important track record of leading UN teams, including in Kazakhstan, just to mention few, much more recently. Mr. Shu is coming here to share with us his wealth of experience and rich perspective, not only from a personal level, but also he carries with him the wealth, knowledge, and capabilities of the United Nations Development Program. Please warmly welcome Mr. Shu, U.S. Secretary General. Mr. Shu, please, thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, Mamadou, for this very generous introduction. And it's really a privilege to be here to speak at this important event. I would like to start by thanking UNHCR, UN Habitat, and also Norwegian Refugee Council for inviting me. And so, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is really a privilege to join this discussion on how, to advance durable solutions for refugees and the nations that host them. In this event, right, and the General Assembly, as we know, in 2018, affirmed the Global Compact on Refugees. And this compact aims to ease the pressure on host communities, host countries, and enhance refugees' self-reliance and make lasting solutions, especially in countries of origin, so displaced people can return safely and with dignity. Yet, despite our best efforts, a growing number of people flee their countries. And this includes over 45 million in 2022, right? A 16 million jump from 2019. And most came from just 3 countries ravaged by conflict and crisis: Syria, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. So the Syria crisis led to the largest displacement, over 14 million people. Nearly half now live in neighboring Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt, along with Germany. So meanwhile, 3 years since the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, 1/3 of families have no home, property, land, income-generating equipment, or other assets. And displaced women and girls are more vulnerable, often due to laws and cultural practices depriving women of their rights to own homes, land, or property. Right? And since that the war in Ukraine started almost 2 years ago, 6.2 million people have fled, mainly to countries in Europe. Climate and also extreme weathers are also increasingly driving displacement globally. In Somalia and southern Ethiopia, for example, pastoralists lost their animals twice or even 3 times in a year, right? Or over a decade. Right? Food insecurity often linked to land scarcity and depletion is also threatening by catastrophes, undermining the choice and the chances of refugees to return. Most refugees are generously hosted by 10 countries. Often, host nations have fewer resources and their own challenges exacerbated by the hosting massive populations, refugee populations, for years on end. So this has heightened internal instability and tensions. Because access to secure housing, land, and property can address both causes and the consequences of forced displacement. And that's because building secure, sustainable housing not only provide homes for displaced people and host communities, it also creates jobs and the refugees and the local communities. And this can only be achieved, however, by investing more in government institutions that manage housing, land, and property, the lack of which fuels much of the instability, driving displacement. So I would make 3 points that I think requires action. First, solutions to forced displacement must be part of a preparedness, recovery, resilience building, and local development plans. Governments hosting refugees face the real challenge of providing adequate shelter, services, and livelihood opportunities for refugees. Often, local authorities have little time and few resources to prepare and manage. Together with the UNHCR, UNDP supports governments hosting Syrian refugees as part of the Regional Refugee Resilience Plan, or 3RP. This year, the 3RP supported over 7.4 million refugees and 6 million host community members in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt. Together with 270 partners, the 3RP provided jobs for over 500,000 refugees and host community members. It also invested $1.6 billion in national public institutions over the past 6 years, including training over 390,000 civil servants. We also help countries at risk from rising sea levels, including Tuvalu, the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and Vanuatu, where we are trying to work together to strengthen the risk management and adaptation strategies. The second area of action is solutions to forced displacement should address barriers to secure housing and livelihoods to better integrate refugees socially and economically. Without a secure place to live, if only temporarily, refugees are at a risk of eviction and exploitation. Combined with economic hardships and limited access to public services, this pushes them further into poverty and marginalization. One example is the Palestinian gatherings in Lebanon, informal refugee areas, in 55 municipalities hosting Palestinian and Syrian refugees, characterized by poor living conditions. Here again, working together with UN Habitat and UNRWA, UNDP is working to help improve their shelter conditions, access to livelihoods, and the public services, along with community infrastructure, working in 45 local communities. The third area is solutions to forced displacement are about restoring agency of refugees and host communities, including returning refugees' rights to repatriation in their homes of origin, in their countries of origin. When refugees are returning at scale, it's critical that security, rule of law, essential infrastructure, community housing, and the basic services are restored, while creating new livelihoods opportunities to achieve stability in these areas. We see this in Afghanistan, where UNDP works with the humanitarian development and the peace partners on the area-based approach for development emergency initiative, so-called Abadi strategy. We have supported 75,000 women-owned enterprises, creating over 900,000 jobs for women and young people. As a co-leader on the durable solutions in Afghanistan with UNHCR together, UNDP also assists receiving communities as they prepare to accommodate returnees from Pakistan. Indeed, ensuring access to justice and redress mechanisms for refugees and host communities is also key to prevent social tensions. Just this month, we supported the signing of the Tbilisi Declaration on access to state-guaranteed legal aid for forcibly displaced populations by representatives from Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. This sets new regional standards for people-centered approaches to access to justice. So in conclusion, as people are displaced for longer, millions are trapped in a state of permanent transition. Families fall further into poverty. Children and the youth miss out on education. Girls are increasingly at risk of being trafficked, and the entire generation can be lost in limbo. The Global Compact on Refugees is our collective promise to ultimately restore the agency of displaced and host communities while increasing their choices and opportunities so they can prosper and thrive. UNDP commits to expanding our support to countries of origin and those welcoming returnees to ease pressure and protect development gains across 34 countries affected by forced displacement. By strengthening capacity of national and local institutions, promoting investments in local economies, infrastructure, and public services, benefiting both host communities and the refugees, while enhancing social cohesion. Secure housing, land, and property rights do not merely represent a roof over one's roof for refugees. For them, housing, property rights, they are the foundations to rebuild their lives and the assurance of a dignified future. So this is what this discussion is about. So thank you very much for your attention. So thank you. Yeah. So if I may, Mamadou, that was a statement that tried to make some points. Okay, it was difficult because the lighting, I cannot really see this clearly. So it's not because of my reading skills, but really, this is not a good spot for reading. But I just want to take maybe 30 seconds to say that I really mean what I said here, right? All these issues. And in my 30-year career with the UN, I have visited a lot of refugee camps, camps of displaced peoples. I've seen these challenges firsthand. And I have vivid memories of talking to people affected by really different conflicts. And these visits left indelible marks on my mind. You cannot really remove this. Right? And often people talk about what is the post PTSDs, like the post-traumatic syndrome, whatever, right? And I think for us really who have worked on these issues for a long time, in a way, so we have that as well, to be honest. Because whenever I go to major events, receptions and so forth, right, these images always do come to my mind. Right? This is why we are here working trying to provide some support, solve some of these problems. So really, again, appreciate this opportunity to speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, USG Shu. You read a very, very solid statement, and the final part that came from your heart was even very compelling. So just want to thank you so much for that, for the commitment, for highlighting the gender dimension around housing, land, and property, that it is not something that you come out of, really, even if you work with us. The excellent examples you provided, I am sure, are going to inspire us. We in the room here, but this event is also live streamed. We know that several people are joining online outside Geneva here. And then, and of course, the commitment that you have made from UNDP as our lead UN organizations on development. So thank you so much, USG. Thank you again. We are very grateful. Now, with this first keynote speech done, we are moving into the panel discussions that we are going to have now. Colleagues around the panel, each one of us will have in this first round around 4 minutes. Please, even if you have speeches, please readjust them 4 minutes so that this is the first part of the panel, and then we'll have a second part of the panel that will help all of us also, because we'll be hearing from the other partner, UN Habitat, into this. So the first question will be going to Monsieur le Ministre Niteretse. Honorable Ministre, depuis janvier jusqu'à cette année, votre gouvernement a délivré plus que 30 000 certificats liés à l'accès à la terre. Vous avez aussi organisé un peu plus tôt un national workshop sur la politique liée à la terre. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire comment vous y arrivez, vous qui avez reçu 22 000 réfugiés qui sont revenus chez vous depuis le début de l'année? Comment les questions de terre, d'accès à la terre sont importantes pour le gouvernement burundais, et toutes les leçons que vous auriez à partager avec nous? À vous, Monsieur le Ministre.
Merci beaucoup. Je commence d'abord à vous remercier pour nous avoir choisis parmi des millions de gens pour co-animer ce panel. D'abord, au Burundi, nous avons une expérience en matière de gestion foncière un peu particulière. Pourquoi? Parce que nous avons une pression démographique sans précédent sur notre sol. Et je pense que la question trouve sa réponse dans le développement qui va suivre, particulièrement que nous avons développé une politique de sécurisation foncière. Nous servons la population locale, donc la population burundaise, et aussi nous servons les retournés, parce que au Burundi, nous avons un problème lié à la gestion des terres. La gestion des terres, c'est l'un des conflits les plus majeurs du pays, où plus de 80% des dossiers pendant devant juridiction sont liés à la gestion foncière. Alors, la certification qu'on a introduite concerne surtout et particulièrement la sécurisation foncière pour diminuer au maximum ces questions liées au foncier. Nous avons des demandes de certification individuelle et des demandes groupées de certification de terre, d'une part, et nous avons dans la zone rurale, et dans la zone urbaine, nous avons le titre foncier délivré par le cadastre national. Aujourd'hui, nous en sommes à des centaines de milliers de certificats déjà délivrés pour pouvoir sécuriser le domaine foncier. Alors, comment on y est arrivé? Nous avons une masse de retournés et qui étaient confrontés aux problèmes fonciers. Et nous avons introduit ce qu'on a appelé la CNTB, Commission nationale, la Commission nationale qui était des terres et autres biens, pour pouvoir arbitrer directement, sans passer par la juridiction, la communauté état témoin, et pour que les retournés ou les réfugiés aient paisiblement les terres sans passer par des procès interminables devant les juridictions compétentes. Et aussi, nous avons introduit bien évidemment ce mécanisme de certification foncière, et aussi actuellement nous avons la justice transitionnelle, notamment la commission vérité et réconciliation, qui va récupérer tous les dossiers qui ont été introduits dans la juridiction ordinaire pour qu'il y ait des facilités pour que les retournés qui datent de 1972 et même, ou même avant, donc qui étaient dans les camps de réfugiés en Tanzanie ou ailleurs depuis 1972 et les dates antérieures puissent retrouver paisiblement leurs terres pour en jouir. C'est-à-dire quoi? On va essayer de tout faire pour que tout individu, tout Burundais, et tout ce qui est, doit avoir accès à tout son domaine patrimoine, de son patrimoine. Et cette situation va conduire effectivement à ce que les spoliateurs de terre soient mis en exergue pour que les retournés aient pleinement jouissance de leur terre. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. C'est des exemples très utiles. These are very helpful examples of how a government has adapted its own structures to the needs that are there, and doing to what USG Zoo said in his statement, to have a people-centered approach. This gives me the pleasure of linking up with Mr. Chris Lukien from ZOA. Mr. Lukien, you are already working in Burundi with the government of Burundi on some of the examples that were provided. But I also understand that ZOA has a vision of peace, reconciliation, and hope in your own forward-looking vision. How are you working with government in contexts like these ones, and what are the key factors that contributed to the success of the project, including in relation to Burundi? Over to you, Mr. Lukien.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, honorable guests. Oh, I need to push this one. We're also working in other countries on similar kind of projects in Congo and also in Uganda. And also based on that experience, I think I would say that any land certification process needs to be an integrated process, a multi-layered process, as it were, where you need to take the local context into account. You see, land rights is not a simple legal or an administrative process, but you have to look at the whole context. You can think of you have to understand the causes of conflict and how to best address these conflicts. One has to take into account those who are likely to be disadvantaged when it comes to land ownership. You need to look at the political side, as the Minister already indicated, the policies and the procedures of the countries and the plans of the country, and how to actually integrate your planning with that. And then, of course, the economic side of things, the land as an economic source of income, and the sustainability side of things as well, you know, the environmental impact and how you can make sustainable use of land as well. Now, when you kind of put that in the context of Burundi, we have a country with a high population density, a very high dependency on subsistence farming, and hence a pressure on land use. Now, add to that displacement and returning refugees, then one knows that there's going to be a lot of conflict. And so, and in our case, when we approached this whole situation, we realized that before you even starting to talk about land registration and land tenure security, that one needs to focus on the conflicts, the causes of conflict, and also how one wants to address those conflicts. And while doing so, paying special attention to those who will be disadvantaged, those who will be at the back of the queue, as it were. And then you can think of, indeed, those who are displaced, who are returning from many years of living in refugee camps in neighboring countries, but also women and people with disabilities. And lastly, perhaps it's good to remember that land registration and land security in itself is not necessarily enough to guarantee that investment is made in land and indeed that families become more food secure. One also has to invest in training. And when I say training, it's like helping them to improve the yields of, helping the farmers to improve the yields of their lands, as well as making responsible and sustainable use of their lands. And then your question was, what has contributed to ZOA's success in this area? And I think I would like to mention 4 things, and I'll touch on them very briefly to stay within my 4 minutes. First of all, I think we invested quite significantly in awareness, so making sure that the whole districts in where we're operating, people were aware of what we are doing through radio, through community meetings, and even through home visits, so that people were aware of their rights and what was expected of them. And then we put a lot of emphasis on building local capacity in terms of helping local community to deal with conflict. And as a result, the vast majority of land conflict issues we were able to deal with that at village level rather than them going through the legal system, and by doing so also alleviating the legal system. Then of course there was good collaboration and coordination with the district authorities, so that our plans were good aligned with the plans of the government. And lastly, and I think I already mentioned that, it meant that we looked beyond just land certification as such, but that we also looked at how can we actually improve land usage. And I think the combination of those two, and understanding that one needs to go beyond just certification and being there for a longer time, has also actually has resulted in a lasting impact, I would say. Let's leave it there to stick to my time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lukien. Very good to come back to these 4 key factors that have determined success, and your partnership with government, extremely important, as well as looking at the whole context. Now it's my pleasure to turn into the 3rd speaker, Dr. John Kagwanja at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Dr. Kagwanja, recognizing that insecure land is both a driver and consequences of forced displacement, what support does or can your center offer to African societies, including the few that have been listed earlier? Over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for associating us with this very important event. So those who do not know, the center is a center of the Africa Union Commission, the Economic Commission for Africa, and the Africa Development Bank. And the reason why we saw it fit to have first the Land Policy Initiative is that at the continental level, it became very important that issues of land governance were addressed in the context of Africa's development, but also coming from the Organization of Africa Unity, which was working on Africa's emancipation. And so we, as the center now, which was established in 2017, out of the Land Policy Initiative, we first generated the knowledge, especially showing the linkages between conflict, issues of conflict, and issues of development, as you have mentioned, and as one was mentioned by our executive from UNDP. And this was important and continues to be important for us in the context of generating the knowledge. We just had the COP, right? So in the context of climate, these issues are central and important, and we need to keep highlighting them, and that becomes the role of ALPC to continue doing so. So ALPC continues to generate the knowledge that helps to highlight the plight of displaced persons in the context of looking at the underlying issues that relate to conflict. And then also generating the tools that are needed. We have guidelines on land, ethnicity, and conflict that came out of the knowledge that we generated in 2017, and these were endorsed by the African Union member states in 2019. And these guidelines form the basis for us in moving forward with not only raising awareness, but also building capacities. You mentioned training, but also seeing that we mainstream the knowledge that we have in the context of policy development and development of strategies that include prevention of conflict, but also the reconstruction that comes out of this. And there, the plight of the refugees are central to this cause. Now, we do work closely with partners and UN institutions, obviously. UN Habitat, UNDP, UNHCR, hopefully more. We continue to work more on this so that we can widen. The mandate is broad, and land governance is central to all of ours. And so we hope to continue working on this in generating the knowledge, advocacy, capacities, but also those that can help us to go on the ground and work with member states, obviously, to get this knowledge into practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. That was absolutely helpful into seeing also the African Development Bank joining you as a joint initiative, because this is at the center of development, as you rightly indicated. This has been focusing a lot, this first part, on the African continent and, of course, on Afghanistan and Asia. It's now my pleasure to continue on my right-hand side. We will be looking at Americas, and then we will end with Europe. Ms. Barco, our star on this podium, congratulations again. You have been courageous into negotiating, including with armed groups, speaking out against various forms of human rights abuses across your native Shoko. The questions I have for you, based on your own understanding of Shoko, where you come from, and what land represents to the people that you are from, why is it so important for the right of forcibly displaced persons in this particular to be restored, and what are the key lessons you would like to share with us? Over to you, Ms. Barco, for 4 minutes. Thank you.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Considero que la tierra y la vivienda, especialmente para comunidades afrocolombianas e indígenas, las cuales se ven afectadas por una compleja historia del conflicto armado que ha venido de manera desproporcionada atacando nuestros territorios. Es de allí que a partir de 1985 ha dejado más de 9 millones de víctimas, principalmente desplazadas de sus territorios. Consideramos que a pesar de la firma del acuerdo de paz en el 2016 entre el gobierno y la FARC-EP, más de 1 millón de personas han sido víctimas de desplazamiento forzado, y es desde entonces que la situación se hace más crítica para las comunidades étnicas del territorio, donde el 80% de las personas son afectadas por desplazamiento forzado y confinamiento, la cual se convierte en una forma agresiva hacia nuestras comunidades y a todos sus habitantes. Esta cifra es una realidad innegable, donde el acceso a la tierra y las viviendas dignas son vitales para nuestra comunidad, teniendo en cuenta que está ligado a nuestro proceso, a nuestros derechos colectivos y étnicos, donde nuestra identidad cultural, el bienestar social y económico está ligada a nuestra vida. y ese bienestar entrelaza a nuestros territorios de una manera coherente, en donde para nosotros principalmente los ríos, los mares, las montañas y la selva constituyen la integridad fundamental en nuestros territorios como forma de vida, como forma de ser, de existir en el mundo. Es muy importante para nosotros la protección desde los territorios, el saneamiento y la recuperación de la ancestralidad, la cual se ha ido perdiendo por estas dinámicas que generan violencia contra las comunidades. Sabemos que en zonas urbanas las comunidades también son desplazadas y las cuales se enfrentan a diferentes obstáculos para acceder a una vivienda digna. Elemento esencial para garantizar la inclusión. Sabemos que una integración muchas veces nos reconecta con esa identidad que se ha perdido en algunos escenarios, porque nos vemos expuestos a diferentes situaciones que generan afectación a nuestra integridad física y social. Sabemos que como comunidades afro e indígenas tenemos una conexión profunda con la naturaleza en nuestro entorno ancestral. Sabemos que la tierra son elementos, o sin tierra no hay vida y no hay vida sin tierra. Las comunidades o las personas desplazadas que a diario nos enfrentamos, a veces perdemos esa conexión vital que hay con la tierra y es donde perdemos también esa capacidad autónoma que tenemos en dar, recibir, proteger y entregar. Sabemos que parte de lo que vivimos hoy también están relacionados con esas actividades extractivistas de megaproyectos que quieren expandirse, y lo que terminamos siendo afectados somos las comunidades, las cuales nos obligan a despojarnos, a desplazarnos de nuestros territorios, que de manera integral son los que nos dan la subsistencia. Proteger los territorios colectivos es una manera o una forma de darle vida y permanencia a las comunidades. ¿Y cómo se logra esta protección a estos territorios? Y hoy, donde las comunidades negras ostentamos la propiedad y la autoridad de la tierra a través de resoluciones que nos ha dado la Unidad Nacional de Tierras, que nos permite acceder de una manera óptima a la tierra y de esa manera también nosotros permitirnos protegerla. El acceso a la tierra y vivienda consideramos que es un bienestar esencial, integral de las comunidades afroindígenas, ya que están vinculadas a nuestros derechos culturales, económicos, sociales. El reconocimiento y la protección son pasos fundamentales que necesitamos a una justicia social, a la promoción de la diversidad cultural, la integridad y la ejecución. Proteger los territorios colectivos garantizan el acceso a la tierra a las personas desplazadas y despojadas. Consideramos que es un paso crucial hacia la justicia, a la reparación histórica de las violaciones de derechos humanos. Consideramos también que la falta de acceso a tierra también ha llevado a la discriminación, a la marginalización de estas comunidades, perpetuando ciclos de pobreza extrema, desigualdades sociales y falta de oportunidad a un desarrollo social, económico integral.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Moreno. And one could see how you deserve this recognition, and for highlighting identity, land welfare, as well as livelihood for the Afro-Colombians. And you also highlighted the issues around private sector and development, how they affect us. Thank you for those very valid points on Colombia, Shoko. I would like to go back now to even higher level, also in the Americas, but at the more central level, national level. Ms. Rock, State Secretary in Honduras. How, please, has the government of Republic of Honduras approached the challenge relating to housing, land, and property? Over to you.
Muchas gracias. Es un honor para mí representar al gobierno de Honduras, a la presidenta Xiomara Castro, que tiene un firme compromiso, nuestro gobierno, con la atención de los derechos humanos y en especial con el compromiso que tenemos para contribuir a la búsqueda de soluciones duraderas en el caso del desplazamiento forzado. Voy a hacer un breve contexto en aras del tiempo, diciendo que en el caso de Honduras no es un fenómeno de tan larga data, quizás menos de 2 décadas, sin embargo tiene una importante significancia para un gran porcentaje de la población. Las cifras que tenemos en este momento sobre desplazamiento forzado no son actualizadas. Nuestro Instituto Nacional de Estadística se encuentra en el proceso de actualización. Esto es uno de los elementos centrales para poder atender la problemática, tener claridad en cuál es la afección. Ahora mismo también se desarrollan políticas de seguridad de carácter emergente que tienen casi el 50% del territorio y el 70% de población bajo un sistema especial de excepción en materia de seguridad, y esto está vinculado precisamente a la operación del crimen organizado, y es ahí donde contextualizo el tipo de desplazamiento que se vive en Honduras. Hay diversos tipos de desplazamiento y uno de ellos, a diferencia de otro contexto, bueno, a diferencia de muchos de los contextos que acá analizamos, que tienen que ver con conflictos armados internos, con situaciones regionales de conflictividad o desastres naturales, sino a un contexto de violencia generalizada, producto de la operación de grupos criminales en diversos espacios del territorio nacional, también la operación de megaproyectos, como ya lo hemos visto en el caso de otros países, y en el caso del crimen con múltiples esferas de acción a diversos niveles, tanto en el ámbito urbano como rural. Además de eso, tenemos situaciones culturales y estructurales que hacen que el menos del 30% de nuestro territorio esté registrado, que refleja también pues, los grandes retos que tenemos. El crimen organizado en nuestro país se compone desde por carteles de narcotráfico hasta por bandas que se conocen como maras e implementan técnicas de control territorial en las zonas urbanas que han llegado incluso a limitar la movilidad de la población durante ciertos horarios, algo conocido como toques de queda. También en zonas residenciales esto se da con mayor alcance en las principales ciudades del país. La inseguridad jurídica respecto a la tenencia de la tierra en las zonas rurales, producto también de conflictos agrarios y de proyectos de desarrollo, uno de ellos muy reciente, la sede también pone en riesgo de desplazamiento o está generando desplazamiento en zonas rurales y tiene una especial incidencia esta figura, el modelo de las zonas de empleo y de desarrollo en los territorios de las comunidades indígenas, donde se estima que más del 50% del territorio indígena podría ser afectado por esta figura. También tenemos conflictividades territoriales de larga data en zonas agrícolas que en algún tiempo fueron de reforma agraria. Todo eso nos genera un panorama sumamente complejo que hace que desde hace exactamente 10 años se haya comenzado a abordar el tema del desplazamiento en Honduras. Pero no es hasta el año pasado, y esto lo anuncio también con mucha honra, que se ha dado un paso institucional firme con la creación de la Ley para Atención a las Personas Desplazadas Internamente por la Violencia, que también contempla toda otra serie de mecanismos, y con esto cierro en aras del tiempo para la segunda ronda, dentro de los que se encuentra el mecanismo de registro de bienes en abandono. Como les decía, tenemos el reto que menos del 30% de los bienes están registrados y las personas que son desplazadas internamente, muchas de ellas tampoco tienen titulación de sus bienes, así que es un doble reto y es un primer paso tanto contar con una ley. Ahora viene el segundo momento que tiene que ver con la implementación y, en el caso que nos ocupe específicamente, la identificación de estos bienes para prevenir las diversas formas que existen, no solamente de usurpación, sino también de privación del dominio para las personas que ya sufren el desplazamiento. Tenemos un reto significativo, lo hemos planteado en todos los foros donde también, al igual que en otros espacios, hacemos el llamado a el acompañamiento a Honduras. Hay muchísima voluntad política y un gran compromiso de nuestro gobierno por atender esta problemática. Sin embargo, tiene una enorme complejidad y el apoyo siempre es bienvenido. Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm sure your call for support is well heard, and I think you have taken the right decision. I would say Burundi, Honduras might want to have some chat discussions outside this room, because this is also how the importance of a panel like this one. Now, thank you for that institutional framework. Now, last but not least, we are changing continents again, coming closer to Geneva. Mr. Mayor of Wrocław, thank you so much for joining us. You are a large city in Poland. How are you looking at housing land and property and all the pressure it is having on cities and the resources? Please share with us any key takeaways. Over to you, Jakob.
Thank you very much, Mamadou. It's such an honor, a pleasure to be with you. And I must say that every time I'm coming out of my bubble, because we are all struggling with some issues that are referring only to our homelands, I'm very enthusiastic. And I see that we have so much in common. And even more, I'm boning and show my respect to UNHCR and Mamadou, Kevin Allen, Astrid Castellani. Those are friends that are working every day. And you are the best. You remember this. Your support is priceless. So thank you for that. But getting to the point, you know, imagine that it's February 2022 and you are running a successful city, 700,000 inhabitants. And then 4 weeks later, in April, you have additional 180,000 people, mostly women with kids, elderly, traumatized, people who are in hopeless position very often. So what can you do? It's impossible to build city within the city in months, in years. And we had weeks. We had no resources, no money, but we were lucky with our ecosystem. We were lucky with population. And I must say, we started with hosting all those people at our homes. I personally had 4 families for 6 months at my private home. But this is not an exception. It's like Wrocław standard we had that day. But it's not a solution for a long time. It's temporary. So at this time, let me give you some facts. We had very poor, overcrowded communal housings with some issues. We had no support from state government. But fortunately, we were at the very blooming economical golden age of our city. So we had a lot of job position and economically strong, blooming age. But also, we had very strong private sector of housing, 50 times more efficient with the property, but also with process of development of this. So what was our principle is to integrate all those people. It's to find a job, to make them earn money, to make dignity, to find a job for women and parents, essentially, to send kids to school. We didn't want to make any camps. We didn't want to invest in shelters. We didn't want them to be in a specific, separated, isolated zone. We made it on our way, and we succeed because we had this economical privilege to be in a very blooming era. And because of this, we also invest in shelters. We provided millions of overnights, millions of meals, hot meals, and blankets, material helps. And we started this, but we know it comes to nothing because we would invest money that we didn't have in many, let's say, supporting essential infrastructural issues like public transport, educational system, which relies on mayor's budget. And we didn't have this money, one more time. So we organized as a platform, as a city. What we had was ability to gather all stakeholders, business, academics, inhabitants, and to make it successful. You know, today, in these shelters, and let me repeat, we welcome at the picking point 250,000 of refugees coming from Ukraine. we have only 500 people that are living in temporary zones. In temporary, it's not a shelter, it's kind of residentials. But together with them, we are creating success story, of course, for now, success story of our city. It means that we have 1.6 unemployment rate. It is minus. So they are co-creating the city. They are staying with us, maybe for a moment, maybe for some years, maybe forever. They haven't decided yet because they are waiting for winning the war. But for sure, they do appreciate that they have place to develop themselves as a human, as a part of society. And I must say that we had obstacles. The main one was the law. And of course, it puts privilege on those residentials who are voters, not for newcomers. We need to change it. And of course, public finance discipline, because as a city, we need to build another 50,000 houses. We cannot afford it because of public finance discipline, and we cannot break the rule, otherwise we will bankrupt, and we will lose our job as mayors. And we are talking with IFC, with World Bank, with the European Investment Bank, with Jaspers, to produce for us dedicated financial instruments to be efficient with this, to solve this problem, not for temporary, but for good. And I have to say that achieving maybe some direct signals, not only from Ukraine after Russian aggression, but from many countries, as we are successful with this within those last 2 years, I believe that we are waiting for another wave. Do not forget about climate change and our challenges that we are facing in next decade. So our obligation, it's not only to be satisfied what we achieve, but also to prepare for more, as we are obliged to share our prosperity and the successful moment that we are sharing together with other people who are in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacob, for the pressure, how you handle the pressure through inclusion, through livelihood, self-reliance, and then the partnership with IFIs that will help you. So I think we are now done with our first round of panels after the first keynote speaker. And as you might have noted, I am a very bad moderator, so I'm not able to keep up with the right time. But it's really a pleasure to have our second keynote speaker, Mr. Erfan Ali, Chief of Staff of UN Habitat. Mr. Ali, please share with us your key takeaways. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, Mr. Howling, ladies and gentlemen. This debate today is extremely important for me. At the professional level, it means a lot to me because in all the areas where I worked before, applying any solutions for displaced people or for refugees was almost impossible without addressing the issue related to 10-year security or housing, land, and property rights. Talking about the Yazidi community in Iraq, where I spent very long time, the IDPs in Darfur, bringing them back to their agriculture, to their livelihood was impossible before addressing or working on the issue of their 10-year security. At the personal level, coming also from a conflict country, my family was so proud that we preserved all our land for decades, and that we lost it all during the conflict in my country in Syria. So this conversation is very important for me and my engagement. I want to say thank you so much for all the partners, for UNHCR, for the Norwegian Refugees Council, for the joint efforts and joint work with UN Habitat, and the coordination of the housing, land, and the property rights. Colleagues, durable solutions for refugees and displaced people cannot be achieved without ensuring adequate housing, land, and property, or 10-year security for all men, women, even for children. Housing, land, and property rights mean having a safe home, being protected from forced eviction, and accessing land for agriculture, for livelihood, and for other income generation activities. When these essential life-saving rights are safeguarded, people can have dignified life. They can be better protected from violence, from extreme weather and health hazards. They have also peace of mind to go to work and to school, for education, for their livelihood. They can start rebuilding their lives after a crisis. We live in a time of multiple crises. Millions of people are forced out of their homes because of conflict, because of violence, because of natural disaster and climate change. Currently the humanitarian tragedies in many areas, in Gaza, in Palestine, in Ukraine, in Sudan, all demonstrate the urgency to step up our joint action to prevent conflicts and to avert also the forced displacement. And when we fail to prevent displacement, we must act to protect these forced out of their homes and lands. We must ensure that they have a dignified life while displaced. We must work together to create the conditions for safe, voluntary, and dignified return. We must provide durable solutions for local integration or for their relocation to other areas, for sure up to their choice. The protection of housing, land, and property rights is essential for all these solutions. Today, we know that almost 56 of the population live in urban areas, in cities, and we know that by 2050, we will have 70% or almost 9 billion people will live in the urban areas. Eventually, cities have become safety net for those who flee from conflict and disasters. Over half of the forcibly displaced people live in urban areas, so nearly 3 out of 5 internally displaced people live already in cities. Yet, the sustainability of the planet depends on the social, economic, and environmental sustainability of our cities. Moreover, peace and stability will largely depend on cities being able to provide adequate housing and decent living conditions for all, including refugees and displaced people. It's clear to all of us that we cannot protect the housing, land, and the property rights of refugees and displaced people without safeguarding also the right of the hosting communities. We in UN Habitat advocates for an inclusive area-based approach to crisis response. This approach which leaves no one and no place behind. The multi-stakeholder pledge that we are presenting today will provide a great frame also to leverage expertise, financial resources, and partnership. And I'm glad that we are in this journey with UNHCR, with our colleagues from NRC, with whom we are co-chairing the global HLP subcluster. UN Habitat pledge to provide technical support for securing HLP rights of refugees and displaced people in countries of origin and in the hosting communities. First, we will continue to coordinate the HLP partners globally and in many countries where we have the leading role. Second, we will continue providing technical support to governments so that HLP interventions are sustainable and contribute to the durable solution. Third, we will develop capacities, disseminate knowledge, and advocate for the protection of HLP rights. Fourth, we will scale up our own internal capacity to carry out multi-sectoral assessments that include HLP and conduct analysis on the land-related root causes of conflict. Fifth, we will work with partners to develop sustainable and inclusive land and housing strategies that will help countries to prevent crisis. Sixth, we will continue mobilizing resources for housing, land, property interventions in collaboration with government, with our humanitarian and development partners. Finally, we look forward to continue working with all of you in this forum and after to make difference in the lives of refugees and displaced people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali. Very good speech and passionate one, as well as for your commitment and pledges. This is really absolutely essential because we'll be meeting in 4 years for the next and third Global Refugee Forum. By then, we would have to make a difference. Colleagues, as I said again, I've not been a very good moderator, as we have to end in about exactly at 12:30. And we have a second round of questions. I will be urging kindly my fellow panelists to really refrain themselves to 1 minute, not necessarily looking at the notes that were prepared by you earlier. So really the questions is the following. One is, you have heard each other. You have heard each other, you have heard from our keynote speakers, and you know the issues. You also have seen and heard some of the pledges that have been made by member states. In your own respective capacities, if you had only 1 minute, what do you think we should be doing in the next 4 years? What do you think we should be doing in the next 4 years between 2 global refugee fora? That's really the questions I would like to ask, and we'll do the reversing order. And please, just 1 minute. I would like to start with Mr. Yaqub Mazur. What do you think are going to happen? And then after that, we will continue in the reversing order. Mr. Mazur, what do you think is going to happen,
Yeah,
and how are we going to do it in the next 4
Just
years?
1 minute. I wish I knew. Of course, I don't. But from our perspective, it's essential to have, I mean, from mayor's perspective, it's essential to have this metropolitan approach. I'm also president of METREX. This is Network of European Metropolitan Areas and Regions, and together across the Europe, we are trying to find solutions, financial, spatial planning, so legal one, how to combine it, because in this context, in this dimension, we are capable to build this residency. And from my perspective and perspective of my colleagues in Europe, essentially, we are preparing for another hundreds of newcomers. So we need to prepare infrastructure, social, economical, but also our mental set. And that's the challenge that we are ready for. In fact, my city is already ready for another 100,000 of new inhabitants, and we expect some more.
No, thank you so much. Preparedness, solution from the onset of an emergency, and the partnership that you have highlighted. Extremely good, and this is really in 1 minute. Honorable Roque, how about you from Honduras?
I'm gonna put my clock. Muy brevemente, creo que primero deberíamos, en un contexto amplio, hablar de responsabilidades compartidas y respuestas diferenciadas. Esto es muy importante, sobre todo cuando hablamos de desplazamientos que tienen que ver con conflictos regionales, pero también creo que es necesario que abordemos las nuevas formas de desplazamiento, entre ellas el climático, que está teniendo un efecto importantísimo en muchos países como el mío. A nivel ya más de Estado, nosotros nos comprometemos, además de haber aprobado esta ley y de estar desarrollando mecanismos, también a desarrollar mecanismos que brinden acceso a la reparación a las personas, y sobre todo creo que uno de los enfoques prioritarios es también el registro único de la tenencia de la tierra, que permita garantizar que las personas puedan, cuando se logre un retorno seguro a sus hogares, poder recuperar sus bienes. Gracias.
Excellent, excellent, and excellent, really. Thank you so much. And not only are we going to learn from each other, I know that there are very good examples, and our NRC, UNDP, UNHCR, UN Habitat will be there available to support you and provide you with the examples that I've seen several years. Thank you so much. Ms. Barco, in 1 minute, what are the key commitments? Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, considero que como misión fundamental de los procesos organizativos y como mujer Nosotros visibilizamos a mujeres, niños, niñas, jóvenes, adultos, afrocolombianos e indígenas, líderes y lideresas empoderados como protagonistas de procesos organizativos en busca de las soluciones a la problemática. Para nosotros, en los territorios, la paz debe ser la realidad enfocada a una solución a la problemática que tenemos, en donde encontremos la relación con el territorio y el medio ambiente para poder hablar de un tránsito en un espacio de reconciliación con participación de las víctimas, donde deben existir condiciones para que las comunidades étnicas del territorio puedan tener goce efectivo de los derechos económicos, culturales, sociales y ambientales con el anhelo de una paz territorial. Es fundamental representar o reconocer el esfuerzo de distintos actores que constituye la sociedad, el Estado local, departamental, nacional e internacional para imaginarnos una paz con esperanza de los pueblos y el mundo entero. Es así que debemos articular esfuerzos donde la cooperación internacional juega un papel fundamental e importante. Son los socios de la interacción de los pueblos, de lo fundamental para poder lograr esa paz donde todos seamos incluyentes.
Excelentes, and muchas gracias, including on the gender dimensions. Thank you so much. Dr. Kagwanja, over to you in a minute, please.
Thank you. Just especially for many communities that host refugees, and given the fact that the majority of land in Africa and many parts of the world is on traditional systems, I think engaging with the traditional authorities is extremely important because that is where the majority of the land is that we are talking about securing for refugees, in as much as we are also engaging governments. And we do have the Forum for African Traditional Authorities that we pledge to have as a platform. We've had that platform effectively engage on the issue of women's land rights. And we think this is an important area where we can also engage them so that they can be champions of this particular cause and also engage government and advocate with government to have better solutions, even as we work on the other side. Within ECA, it is especially entrenching this issue in other socioeconomic tracks of our work, and also with the African Union on the political side as well, with the African Development Bank on the financing as well. When you're talking about housing, they do finance a lot of housing and infrastructure that can be a conduit for supporting this particular cause as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. So as we said, traditional actors, and I'm sure Ms. Barco also might be interested into that because there are very key linkages as well as the financing. Mr. Lukian, over to you.
Yeah, I think what I've learned from today's discussion is the importance to collaborate and learn from one another in terms of approaches that work. And I think if you look at the situation as we speak, I think situation around land rights become increasingly urgent also when you look at climate change and the impact that climate change will have particularly in the sort of vulnerable areas. And in some ways I would like to add ZOA's pledge to that because as ZOA we are committed to using our integrated approach to both land rights as well as land usage to provide sustainable solutions to displaced people, returnees and host communities in a way that will contribute, we hope, to lasting peace and stability in those places. And through our approach we also help, we hope to help to increase food security and improve livelihoods. And that's our commitment.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. And thanks also for adding to what Natalie and Jacob said around climate change. And thanks a lot for the pledges that you made. Thank you so much. Monsieur le ministre, oui. À vous pour 1 minute, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense qu'il faudrait qu'il y ait une solidarité internationale pour venir en aide aux vulnérables de tout genre, notamment les déplacés, les apatrides, les rapatriés, ainsi de suite. Et les hommes sans terre, surtout et particulièrement. Et il faut prévenir les conflits, prévenir les déplacements forcés, et prévenir la commission des crimes et réprimer c'est déjà commis, parce que c'est ça qui pousse aux gens au déplacement forcé. Il faut maintenir et appuyer en tout lieu le principe de la démocratie, le principe de la gouvernance pour assurer la survie de tout un chacun. Et, les communautés d'accueil, pour les réfugiés ou les retourner, il faut qu'elles soient sensibilisées pour ouvrir les bras à ceux qui sont dans cette situation inenviable. Et en fait, il faut créer les conditions de paix, les conditions de vivre ensemble, promouvoir le vivre ensemble et que tout un chacun ait conscience que le malheur d'autrui peut contribuer à son malheur mieux.
No, merci beaucoup. So thank you, Minister. I think it is all about responsibility sharing, prevention of conflict, and at least two of the panelists were highlighting the need for the host communities. It's about refugees, it's about returnees, but it's also about host communities. As we are ending, it is my distinct pleasure to kindly ask our dear friend Marit, who is not only the Global Director, Program Director for NRC, but also a colleague who has been working extremely hard in the field, for your final reflections after listening to all of these colleagues. Marit, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to see so many people, though we would, of course, have liked to see many more. I want to, first of all, put my thanks to UNHCR for organizing this event. From NRC's side, we are very passionate about housing, land and property rights. We have worked on this for many years, since my colleague was just reminding me that we have worked on this since the Balkans. So for 20 years, this has been a core element of what we do. It's because we really believe that this is a fundamental element if we are to protect people during crisis, but also to find solutions. I'm also very happy to see the excellent panel that we've had put together today, and all of the ideas and the passion and the commitment to address housing, land and property rights. It's very welcome. I think for us is that we know that without a safe place to stay and without being able to return to your property and your family's land, it is really difficult for people to both restart their lives and rebuild their futures. I wanted to very quickly touch upon some of the things that the panelists said that resonated with me, and I think one of them is the examples we were having on documentation and certification. We know that this is a fundamental element, and the example from Burundi, I think, is very interesting. I also think that the Colombia example around land restitution is something we also know is crucial in a return process, so that people can really restart their lives. From the example from Poland, I also wanted to reflect a bit on how market-based approaches and really looking at that is key, not only to give solutions to people and that we can host people in decent accommodation and be part of the societies in which they actually reside, but also that we have seen that by using market-based approaches to find housing solutions, we also expand the low-cost market and the low-cost market housing solutions in these contexts. So this is a bit of a spin-off that also has very positive results. Lastly, I wanted to talk about women and women's housing, land and property rights, which we know is a challenge both in terms of their access to them in the first place before a crisis, but also how they are challenged in accessing these rights after a crisis. So I'm very happy to hear that several of the panelists and the keynote speakers address this. And this is another topic that is very dear to NRC. From our side, what we are pledging, that we will, as colleagues from UN Habitat was saying, we will also provide technical assistance to duty bearers, both on policies for documentation of HLP and strategies, but also in terms of restitution in terms of restitution and documentation. I also, of course, as an operational organization, we're also providing direct assistance and direct services to people, and that is something we are definitely committed to. Together with UN Habitat, we also co-chair the area of responsibility under the protection cluster, and we do so globally, but also in 18 countries around the world. Lastly, I wanted to end with some asks. So I think our plea is really for donors and host governments and countries of origin to really make HLP and housing, land and property rights a priority in responses, but also to find solutions. To the HLP community, we would like to co-convene one global event between now and 2027 to really keep this on the agenda, and we hope that that is something we could do. We want it to be it's a technical event. We want to focus on solutions and concrete examples. We do not want it to be a talk shop. So I think that is something we really would like to encourage all of you to attend and to contribute to. And then I think lastly, this is just the beginning. It is not the end. And actually the real work starts now. So I want to encourage all of us to really step it up from now onwards and not conclude here today with this being what the result we achieved together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marit. We will be meeting in 4 years for the next Global Refugee Forum. And between now and that second Global Refugee Forum, there is a high-level officials meeting. So in 2 years' time, in December. The idea is that we keep moving. We have made a lot of commitment. I think there were around 6 less than 10 commitment on housing, land, and property at the last GRF. This time we are hearing at least 29 commitment pledges that are being made. You have heard individual states making pledges. So we are on the good track into solving some of the issues that USD Shu was mentioning earlier. We are on the good track, but we need to do more. And for me, as part of the concluding remarks I want to make, it is just to say that the way NRC just did and all of you did with pledges commitment, it is critical for protection and solutions. Durable solutions, looking at the gender dimension, looking at the context in which we are, and adapting tools, processes, frameworks that are helpful for such situations. The issue of partnership was highlighted. Across this panel, you see mayors, you see representatives of national government, you see representatives of civil actors, human rights activists, socioeconomic rights activists, but you also see people working at continental level as well as NGOs. It is through this partnership that we can make things work, and IFIs play a very important role around financing, using all the tools that are available. I will not underestimate the issue around gender dimensions. It is so critical. A lot of the speakers have been saying this. Please, let's take them into considerations. It is critical for local integration. It is critical for reintegration of returnees and all of that. We had in our list, and I go back again to my failure as a good moderator, we had Slovenia that wanted to speak. We have the ICGLR, which is the International Conference on the Great Lake Regions. We have DRC, Barbara. So we have all these 3 speakers who wanted to speak. I will take it on me, but I'm moving soon back to Nairobi next week, so you will not find me for not allowing you to speak. But please share your pledges. Colleagues are online. NRC, UN Habitat, UNHCR, and all of you have done an excellent job into preparing this panel. We have a lot of colleagues who are following us online. But as someone just said now, this is a continuation. Let's upscale it, and when we meet here in 2 years' time, and in 4 years' time, we'll be making progress for our brothers and sisters who have been forcibly displaced. Thank you so much, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, if I may ask you, because I know you have something. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Minister.
Please, this is
Yes,
my
of
private
course.
number, so
Yes, of
WhatsApp,
course.
whatever. Thank you.
Yes, let's do something